Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Slovak University of Agriculture podcast here at the Agrobiotech studio in Nitra. I am Mitchiko Paulette Aljas, a PhD student at the Faculty of European Studies and Regional Development, your host for today. In today's episode, we have a very timely and insightful conversation ahead of us. We are honored to be joined by Mr. Hubertus Gay, Senior Expert for Agricultural Policies at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. Mr. Gay is here at the Slovak University of Agriculture in Nitra, and we are sitting down with him for a relaxed yet in-depth discussion about the current global outlook for agriculture based on the newly released OECD FAO Agricultural Outlook. This annual report is a key resource that explores trends, challenges, and opportunities in agriculture and food markets over the next decade, and we are excited to dig into some of the most relevant findings with one of its leading contributors. So, whether you are a policymaker, researcher, student, or simply interested in where global agriculture is heading, stay tuned. There's a lot to learn in the next few minutes. Mr. Gay, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. To begin with, let me start with a question about the implications of this report. The OECD and FAO have recently published the Agricultural Outlook 2025-2034. What are the main conclusions of this report and what implications do they hold for farmers in Europe?
Yeah, thank you. This report is conducted between the OECD and the FAO since 21 years. So every year we are looking at the global markets and looking forward for 10 years to see what are the developments policymakers and also the society has to take into account when planning ahead how agriculture develops. What do we see in the next 10 years coming? And that's the main topic also this one, is there is still increasing demand for food, especially in low and lower middle income countries where there's a insufficient supply of food, and especially also the diversity of food is not as big. And that means that globally the demand for agriculture products is increasing, also especially also for animal-based products. But also that, on the other hand, means that there's additional pressure on the global environment, because when you produce more agriculture products, you also need more resources and you emit also more greenhouse gases. So what we also did, we looked into how to combine those challenges to have enough food for all people globally and also to reduce the impact on the environment. And you need to combine increased efforts in productivity with also at the same time introducing new production technology which are less harmful for the environment. On the other hand, large parts is not produced where it's consumed. Around 1/5 of all calories are crossing borders. And that means that every country is responsible to produce. And also Slovakia is very much involved in this global exchange of products and is also responsible to produce products which are then consumed somewhere else. And also Slovakia imports lots of products for domestic consumption. And there we are looking also in the impact of changing trade patterns, what that means and how that develops. And the challenge for farmers is that because this demand is growing, but on the other hand also productivity is growing, the pressure on prices will consist over the next 10 years, make it for farmers more difficult to earn a living and have to adapt to the new systems or the developing system that there's pressure on prices.
Great, thank you for that answer. So there's really a huge implication for the farmers in Europe regarding this report. Now, the Agricultural Outlook projects global consumption of agriculture and fish products to rise by 13% by 2034, driven almost entirely by low and middle income countries. Meanwhile, EU green policies target lower emissions, reduced chemical use, and greater sustainability and biodiversity. Innovations will play a crucial role. What is your view on new genomic techniques and their uneven adoption worldwide? Is the EU falling behind?
Overall, it's necessary to improve global productivity And new genomics facilities are one way of achieving this. And so they are necessary on a global scale. On the other hand, also the impact on the environment, also the societal acceptance of those techniques are important. And especially in Europe, there is a big conflict between those situations, and it's the question how the societal support to those kinds of technologies will increase again, that also Europe can take part more in depth in those kind of technologies. They are necessary on a global scale. It is not really possible to completely detect from a global trend. Europe can a bit steer, but they cannot make other countries accept that it's not happening. And so it is difficult to link from the global trend to more and more of those kind of technologies. And in the long run, it will be a global effort. The question is how much Europe will participate. And it's, of course, of hope that Europe, as a very innovative and very somehow security-focused region, will participate in a great style also in those kind of technologies, also to make them more beneficial for all society.
Yes, that is correct. And EU has a very important role in cooperation in these types of new techniques. So the European Commission has presented in July 2025 a proposal for a new Common Agricultural Policy, or CAP, for the period 2028 to 2034. Although the EC proposal may change during the negotiation process, it already introduces new elements that will shape the future of farming in the EU. To what extent can the potential effects of the new cap on global agricultural prices and food supply up to 2024 be assessed?
I think the new cap, and that's also the trend of the caps in Europe more and more, it is more and more decoupled from markets directly. It's more orientated on additional effects. It's more orientated on benefits to the environment, how to make the agriculture production more environmental focused and so on. So the market impacts are very difficult to detect as they are secondary in this field. And it is also less and less the aim of the policy really to produce agriculture output. It is more to facilitate the agriculture production in a way that it's for farmers possible to do so in a more environmental friendly way. It is therefore very difficult to see the global impact. It will put additional efforts and reduce actually the production capacity in Europe in terms of quantity, but it might improve it in quality, and also it clearly will aim to reduce the environmental impact of farming. And that's also a big benefit, but it's very little on the market side, which can be seen from the proposal at this stage.
Yes, and I think it will greatly help as well in the drive toward sustainable food systems in the future. The new EU budget proposal for 2028 to 2034, the multi-annual financial framework, reflects shifting priorities, partly due to the war in Ukraine and migration pressures. As a result, the budget for farmers will be reduced. In the 2021 to 2027 period, the CAP received almost 400 billion euros compared to just over 300 billion euros ring-fenced for agriculture in the proposed single fund for 2028 to 2034. What will be the key implications of this budget reduction for European farmers and global food security?
The key implications of lower CAP budget is really that the budget transfers, which is part of the Common Agriculture Policy, might be less towards farming. That means that the farmers have to gain more income from other sources and get less from government sources. That makes it more difficult, maybe more market-orientated in terms of production. But on the other hand, the sector will likely receive less support. And that means also for several farmers or producers who are staying in mainly because of support, it will be more difficult to stay in. That means there will be a reorientation. There might be, as before, a slight production impact, which is very difficult because it's a secondary impact to assess. And therefore, I think it's more important to see that the building on subsidy as an income source is very little a long-term perspective. It will get less, and that's already indicated with the financial planning. The question is how it's focused, but it's clearly the government support for farming in terms of monetary value will be less, and that's for farmers also an orientation and an indication to plan their future.
Yes, because I also actually read from the agricultural outlook that there is a challenge for the farmers to increase their production and their income, especially if they are individual farmers or small-scale farmers. So they will be really affected by this decrease in budget. Next question. Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine, our neighboring country, has caused food inflation. In response, the EU introduced several measures to mitigate the immediate impact on farmers and consumers, while also boosting agricultural production to help meet global demand. For example, the solidarity lanes enabled Ukraine to export more than 23 million tons of agricultural products to world markets. What is the current impact of the war in Ukraine on global food security?
Looking at that, once is shown is that global agriculture markets are very resilient, which lots of people, when they see it first, don't expect. But very often they adjust. They adjust in terms of trade flows, they adjust in terms of production and so on. And also in the terms of Russia's war against Ukraine, you saw this development. For 2 months, you really saw a big impact on global markets and shortages, which resulted in skyrocketing prices. The markets adjusted. There were other countries jumping in. There was also, in the long run, after some months, also the possibility to export again from Ukraine. Also, Russia entered the market again. They were also out for a short while. In the end, currently, the impact is more limited. One impact is clearly the production potential of Ukraine is a bit less than it was before. And also, the cost of exporting is much higher. So the cost of Ukrainian products to enter into the markets is higher because domestic transportation is more costly, and also the transportation afterwards, either about the land routes via also the Slovakia, but also the sea roads because of insurances and so on is more costly along the Black Sea. So what it does, it really inflated a bit the current price situation to a smaller amount. That's why the global prices are slightly higher than they would be without this situation. But really the food security globally is secured, is there. There's no shortage of produce. It is more that because of that one, the cheapest producer or one of the cheapest supplier is a bit more expensive. And that actually puts a lower floor price for food security and makes it for very poor consumer more costly to purchase food.
Well, that is a welcome response. That is very positive to hear, especially for those who are worried that the global food security might be affected by this. And it just shows that the market is resilient, even if there's a war going on. So farmers in neighboring countries such as Poland, Hungary, and Romania have expressed concerns about Ukraine's potential EU membership. Their main worries relate to competitiveness and a possible reduction in farm subsidies. From the perspective of global food security, what is your view on Ukraine's accession to the EU?
I think one big benefit for the global food security and also for the global food systems is that Ukraine would actually implement and introduce much more measures which are also aiming at additional effects of food production. So the orientation of security, of environmental impact would be much more emphasized in their domestic production. But of course, neighboring countries and the rest of the EU would feel this additional supply coming from Ukraine in a joint market. The government support, as we heard earlier, is limited what can be provided by the European budget. That means also when there are more producers, and especially Ukraine as a very large producer, would share the government support per individuum would be smaller. And that's, of course, a development we have seen in the EU several times, and it would be really more pronounced. And that will be a challenge in terms of negotiation and relationship. But in terms of global food security, the Ukraine with a more stable situation and production methods and also more orientation on that one would be a much more reliable and good supplier to global food security. But of course, the integration of policies and especially the effect on neighboring countries would be there, and there would be some impact and adaptation needed.
Well, that is an interesting and insightful information about Ukraine's succession. We have just covered a wide range of important and complex issues that affect all of us. Now, I would like to shift gears a little and ask you some more personal questions, if that's all right with you.
That's all right, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. You have spent many years working on global food and agricultural issues. What has kept you passionate about this field?
I think what keeps me passionate is this interaction between global food security, the production itself. I'm coming from a farm, knowing farming from inside out, and seeing this link between global effects and local production, and how you can secure that the societies in itself are progressing in this field of having enough food for everybody and having also less impact on the environment, keeps me going and keeps me interested and keeps me always looking around what's happening and where are linkages and where we can improve, and also what we have to show that people are aware of those linkages, because it's sometimes you just neglect parts which are very important on a global scale.
That is very noble and inspiring. When you look at the trends in global agriculture, do you feel hopeful for the future? What gives you that hope?
I think I always feel hopeful, and I think that's important to be. There's a development, there's always shifts. You see also in the lifetime how production is changing, there are innovation coming up. It's more and more people globally who have enough food. It is sometimes you have steps back, but you also see the interaction and collaboration globally, and you see how people exchange. And I always hope and think that people want to improve, and that's what I see, and which makes me really hopeful and interested in the sector and being engaged and being really positive about what's happening.
That's wonderful, because behind every chart and forecast are real people. There are farmers, families, communities. How do you personally stay connected to the human side of these global reports?
I think the human side is always important, and that's why it's important to exchange with people, to see what are their reactions also on the information, how they see themselves reflected, how they criticize also what you produce and saying that's not what we feel at the moment. You also see the interests are shifting between different groups, different regions. You see sometimes the environment is really important and the overarching part. Sometimes it's food security, having enough, having more. We want to have more food, better food. We want to have different food. So it's like you see also different interests coming together and also sometimes conflictual. But that's also important. And when you get people engaged, then you see that you do something relevant.
Talking about engagement, how do you see the role of young people, especially students like those here at the Slovak University of Agriculture, in shaping the future of food and farming?
I think young people are always questioning, innovating, are more willing to change than older people. And I think that's also at universities one of the themes. It's like they they learn, but also challenge what is presented to them. And I think that's important. It's like there's always a way to do it better, and it's always a way to change. Sometimes people say, oh, we should not change, it has worked so long like this. And then students come around and say, no, we don't like it, it should be different, it should be better. And I think that's the role of students, and lots of students can do it. And I think students are always pushing the establishment, and that's part of studying. It's not pushing the establishment to finding new solutions. And that's why I think it's very important to interact with young people, because they don't accept when you say it was always like this. They just say, yeah, but it could be better. And then you're coming into discussion which brings you forward. And that's why I think students are very important in improving and bringing systems forward.
That is very insightful, because young people, we really like to embrace new things, new challenges, new technologies. And hearing you say that you accept all of these is very inspiring for me as a student as well. That ends my questions for you, Mr. Gay. And thank you once again for sharing your expertise, your insights, and your perspective with us today. It's been a privilege to have you on the podcast. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Until next time, take care and stay curious.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.